Now, the mid-year budget update showed an increase in government spending. It's propped up the economy to a large extent recently.
It has. I mean, these are tough times for everybody. I think it also goes to show that we really do need to have some relief from the RBA in terms of interest rates.
Do you think it'll happen? There is a bit of a growing momentum in thought process that it could well happen in February.
Yeah, there is. Although now we're seeing a little bit more anxiety in international reserve banks, central banks. The Federal Reserve, for example, forecasting only 2 cuts next year. That sets shockwaves through the stock exchange. I'm still to be convinced that the RBA is going to go down the path of cutting interest rates. I think they should. I think they should go and have a look at other people's economies, the economies of people in everyday Australia, and see how tough they're doing it, and recognise that the economy is slowing down, and that there's always a risk that you'll get a hard landing if you're too extreme in the way in which you manage your interest rate movements.
Yeah, you don't have to knock on too many doors to see people that are doing it tough, particularly this time of year.
Yeah.
Now, is the coalition vulnerable to a Labor scare campaign, do you think, around spending?
A little bit. I mean, once you start having a crack at the government with the MYEFO, the mid-year forecast for spending, then it begs the question, well, what are you going to do when you come to government, if you do come to government, to rein in spending? Because Jim Chalmers is pointing out that most of this spending is absolutely critical. You know, it's around defence, it's around essential services, it's around health spending. And of course, Peter Dutton's got a bit of a record for wanting to change arrangements around Medicare in the past. And that's a problem that he's got as a remind campaign that Labor can run at any time, from when Dutton was the health minister and wanted to introduce a $7 payment for people going to bulk billing doctors. Not a well-received proposal back in the day, and it was put down pretty quickly, but it opens him up to those sorts of attacks. So if you are in opposition and you're going to have a go at the government about its spending record, you've got to then show where you're going to make the cuts.
He's done well though, Dutton. You like, let's wind back 12 months ago, and I think many thought he was no hope at an election. He's right in this. This is a head bobber.
This is a really tough election for the government. No one should be in any doubt about that. But when it comes to the pointy end, as we're approaching now, we're seeing it with the nuclear debate. Suddenly you put forward your policies, and if they've got a few holes in them, people start coming after them and poking their fingers into those holes and saying, well, you know, how's this going to play out? What are you going to do? And you can't just keep pretending that it's not something for you to answer. You have to answer. You have to do press conferences to the full press gallery. You can't do them in regional Australia or 15 minutes before question time, as he's been doing. You actually got to get out there and start answering for it. So I think we'll see a lot more of a contest in the coming days between the government, which has been on the back foot for a long time now, mainly over cost of living issues, over which they've got very little control, and the opposition, who now have to account for the policies that they're putting forward. I think nuclear is proving to be a bigger issue for them than they thought it would be.
Yeah, we'll watch that space with interest. Now, foreign policy, Donald Trump issued a blunt warning to Hamas recently. Now we see hopes of a truce, possibly before the new year. Are the two things linked?
Look, even if they're not, he'll say they are, if it comes about, and that's the nature of politics in the United States today. I think it's a much more complex issue than that. I mean, there's huge instability in the Middle East now, made even more unstable by the change of regime in Syria and the jockeying that's going to go on now amongst the countries surrounding Syria, you know, particularly Iran and Turkey to the other side. And that's going to make a bigger difference, I think, to the nature of politics in the Middle East. We are getting into a very, very unstable phase again. And of course, if there was a major escalation of war, that would mean oil supplies had closed down or would be severely restricted. You start looking at oil shocks and the like, which is really bad for the international economy. So all the international leaders, Trump included, because he's about to become the president, have to be very cognizant of what the unforeseen consequences of getting too heavily involved in these issues is.
Heading to Ukraine, Australia is reopening its embassy in the capital. Do you welcome that?
Yeah, I do. I think I would have liked to have seen it happen earlier, to be honest with you. I think a lot of other nations were opening up their embassies some time ago, but Australia took a very cautious view, fair enough. I mean, Kyiv was being bombed by the Russians and still sometimes is.
Night,
so a responsible government has to make a call about where it's going to send its representatives, but now they've formed the view clearly that it's time to do it. It's a good thing.
Have a good Christmas.
Thank you.
Hopefully we'll see you next Saturday.
Yeah, and all the best to you, your family and your viewers.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, Bruce.